What's going on, y'all? Welcome back to basketball. I kid you guys not, I just got back to my apartment maybe 3 hours ago or something. I was kind of traveling through the night. For those of you that don't know, I got hired by an NBA team on contract for this offseason. Basically, I'm helping them with some of their analytics and roster building and stuff. But anyway, I decided to stay late last night, fly out through the night, and I just get back and I hear that Dan Hurley is possibly going to be the coach of the Los Angeles Lakers. Now, normally I wouldn't talk about coaching rumors necessarily about who's going to coach who, but I think that there's a conversation to be had about why something like this would even happen, because it's pretty out of left field. This was something that wasn't on my radar at all. So I just feel like there's a conversation to be had about the state of college sports and the NBA and stuff like that. So let's just talk about it for a little bit. So here's the man himself, Dan Hurley. For those of you that don't know, he's the UConn basketball coach, won the last 2 national titles, and just a little brief synopsis about him and why he's so special in the college basketball world. Obviously, a ton of success and everything, develops players extremely well in a college basketball environment that it's kind of hard to see guys translate into NBA level talent. UConn talent just translates really, really, really well, and that's because he has a really good understanding, him and his staff, I should say, have a great understanding about how the NBA works, how modern basketball works. They implement modern NBA systems into a college atmosphere that generally just doesn't have any interesting basketball being played. I kind of rack on college basketball a lot on this channel. It's because most college coaches just don't get innovative and they don't actually take the time to study where the game is at right now. But UConn is one of those exceptions where they actually just run NBA level basketball stuff or pro level basketball stuff that should be easy enough to teach to everybody else, maybe not to the same level as an NBA player, but regardless, this is why they're able to just kind of cakewalk through so many people. They established a system that works, they develop players, and they just steamroll everybody. He's also been known for establishing just a great culture. I do know some of the people on the staff and everything. And when I say that these guys really care about their players and their development, and they make sure that they bring not just the best players in, but the right players in. Because here's the thing, right? They're never usually getting the best player in the country to come to them, and unless it's on the women's side. But they have a great culture and everything going there as well, so shout out UConn. But they bring in these guys and they really care about them. They really develop them as people and not just players, which is something that I tried to preach when I was at the college level all the time. And I really appreciate that out of them. There's times even during this draft process that you've heard me talk about when it comes to Stephon Castle and stuff like that. And obviously Klingon applies to this as well. But there's been times where the UConn staff has made it pretty clear that they'll tell players hey, we don't want you, or we don't think you should go to the draft at this point or this point, because we don't want you to end up in this franchise or something like that. We want you to end up around the right people. We want you to be ready for the pros. We think you need to mature more or something like that. And there's been players that have gone through their system that they wish would have stuck around or something a little bit longer so that they could work out just a little bit better. But I really admire that about him. So you've got this really smart basketball mind that can really build cultures and everything. So you're okay, really, really good basketball coach. The Los Angeles Lakers are hoping to bring him in and everything. So let's kind of just talk about that. So obviously it looked like they were keying in on JJ Redick for a while, and who knows, that could still end up happening. We don't know. This is all just speculative at this point. All the Lakers are really telling us that we're going gung ho over this. We're trying to get Hurley over here. But my thing with JJ Redick always was, and I'm not doubting that JJ Redick can't be a great basketball coach. That's not what I'm saying at all. I think he'd be a phenomenal basketball coach. It seems like he has so much else going on in his life, and he's young enough to where he doesn't have to do it right now. And this may not be the most interesting thing for you guys to hear or whatever, but at least me, that's been within the coaching ranks and everything, and having to take new jobs and things like that, that's a lot of life stuff that you have to do. I remember when I got my first assistant coaching position once I was done with college and everything. I remember that I interviewed with the team. I did a second interview then, and on the third day they said, okay, you have to be here in 2 days. And I had to move from one state across the US all the way to another within 2 days. And I had a girlfriend that I was leaving behind, and now my fiance or whatever, but it's I had friends, I had family, I had all this stuff, and it's you just have to pick up and just go somewhere else instantly and start working 90 hours a week. And it's the best job in the world. I loved it, but it's hard. There's a lot to do. And JJ Redick's got businesses where he's at, right? He talks about coaching his kids all the time. And I don't want to speak like for JJ Redick, like he has his reasons to do this or that, and like he should be able to do whatever he wants. That's a family decision for him at the end of the day. It just, to me, it seemed like he was like really enjoying this stuff, and he's got all this media stuff that he can do, right? And I'm sure he likes being home sometimes, even though he has to travel a lot to be like a broadcaster or whatever. I just was always like, this seems like a weird like personal time to do this, but you only get so many chances to coach the Lakers as well, so I understand. But now, why would Dan Hurley be doing it, right? Because the stigma always was that it's better to coach in college than the NBA. And as someone that's been at both levels, I've never been like an assistant level coach in like the NBA or something like that, but I've been at that level, and I've got plenty of friends that are, including my business partner's an assistant coach in the NBA. You see a different style of coaching there, right? You guys can comprehend this. You're coaching millionaires versus you're coaching kids, right? At the college game, it used to just be like you recruit the kids, they're there, they're kind of stuck with you or whatever. You just get to coach them as is, right? And you just get almost complete control of these guys. You have to coach like the NBA dudes, and like they're the best at what they do. You have to manage personality a little bit more. It's harder to get millionaires to buy in to do things, right? It's a harder game at the end of the day to coach. Whereas at college, you just kind of get to be that dude, right? And just control everything. But that's not how college is anymore. And I'll admit that I haven't been a part of like a staff where NIL has been a thing. I left to go join like the pro level stuff at that point. I did come back down for a year or whatever, so I guess I did do like a year of NIL stuff, and I didn't have to touch it like too much. But it's a completely different game now. Now you have to recruit a player, you have to tell him how much money he's going to get, right? And then you have to convince him to stay at the end of each season. And it's so much to manage besides just like growing and building these young men. So that's a lot of business that you now have to manage as like a college basketball coach. It's not just coaching, which is incredibly time consuming and hard in itself. Like you now also have to manage the business side of things, to which you then say, like, why don't they just have someone that is supposed to do that? And the answer is because you're not supposed to. But I can tell you guys for a fact, I'm not going to tell you which programs, but a lot of these top programs literally are paying guys under the table whose entire job it is to just go out and find NIL deals and just kind of group all this money together so that they know how much they can offer. And like I said, I can think of 4 or 5 programs just off the top of my head that I know that are doing that, just from me talking to like their some of their staff members, which is crazy, right? Like that's absolutely nuts. But it is what it is, right? And that's just what college basketball is now, and that's fine. Like the players should be getting paid, right? It's never been a question of that. The players should be getting paid. It should be this, but college basketball is so disorganized right now. I told people when I was in it, I was like, I think college basketball as we know it, like the NCAA, is going to become obsolete by like 2030 was my prediction at this point. And it honestly feels like we're slowly inching towards it. Like the NCAA just doesn't hold much of a purpose. At some point, the conferences are going to realize that, and these are just going to become semi-pro teams that are attached to the colleges. At least that's what I imagine, at least, because the business model just doesn't make sense the way it's currently set up. And now that players can get like guaranteed salaries and stuff from the team, which is a really cool win and everything, I think it's very important for college basketball. The rules are going to keep changing year after year after year, so the college game is going to be adapting, and it's going to be in turmoil for a couple years. I personally think the way you should do it is you should have to sign guys to contracts and stuff, and that's just like what it is. Like you can sign a 2-year deal with UConn or something like that, and that's how it is, so you don't have to worry about guys going in the portal. But anyway, we're talking about Hurley. So all of that was to kind of describe like the college basketball world is pretty volatile right now, and it's a pretty difficult job, whereas he can just go coach the Lakers, and like that's an easy thing to do, but he can go coach the Lakers, and all he has to do is coach basketball. He doesn't have to be the GM. He doesn't have to worry about trades or anything. Like he can just be an advisor on that more so if he needs to. He can just coach basketball, implement culture. So what could this potentially mean for the Lakers, right? Like, obviously, you're getting a phenomenal basketball coach. It's a lot of pressure to come in and coach the Lakers, and it's a team that just genuinely probably isn't quite the championship contender that it wants to be, so you're under, like, a potential of a lot of scrutiny, and that's what happens whenever you coach a LeBron James team. But this could be the Lakers, like, more so long-term play, right? And the Lakers are a smart organization. They got a lot of really smart people at the top of that organization. They're obviously always trying to win, and sometimes that makes them do somewhat illogical risks or whatever, but that's what you have to do when you're trying to contend all the time. But you bring in a guy like Hurley, who could still be coaching in basketball for quite a long time if he wants to, right? This could be a play to say, like, hey, LeBron's not going to be here, like, a ton longer necessarily, and maybe this is our play, like, long term. You start to establish some sort of culture of greatness, hard work, and all the things that he really does for teams. And you're like, when LeBron's gone, we've started off our rebuild really strong already because we've got the coach of the future in mind. And there's also the conversation to be had, and I know you guys don't necessarily want to hear this, but like maybe they're the team that takes Bronny, right? And Bronny, in my opinion, for those of you that haven't heard, I think he can be a good NBA player. That's just from me watching the film and everything. I watched a lot of film over this last week with pro team, or an NBA team, so just take my word for it, man. I'm not the only one in the room that thinks that, and I don't know what to tell you if you don't think it. It's just what it is. But a guy that can actually develop him in an NBA style like him, I think it's him. I think he's the guy that can do it at the end of the day. So I think it's just going to be really interesting to see where all this goes with Hurley. I know that this is kind of a roundabout video, and this is kind of just me talking about things, but I figured for those of you that were interested, this is an interesting look at what this could potentially be. Maybe nothing happens whatsoever, but I just figured this is an interesting time to talk about like the state of college basketball and what I'm hearing from like so many people that they're like, dude, it's just so hard to be here at this point. It's really hard to manage all this stuff. And like I said, the game's going to keep changing, and that's really frustrating because you're having to learn new rules all the time, and you're having to make all these adjustments while trying to just coach and do your normal job and everything. So it's hard. It's really, really hard. But man, if that happens, if Dan Hurley comes there, I don't know if it's going to make a difference necessarily in the Lakers winning a championship or not, but I think it's going to be really, really cool, and I think it's going to send a message to college basketball, and it might just open the floodgates for some other people to come out. I don't know who that would be, but I think it'd be interesting to see. But yeah, let me know your guys' thoughts and everything. Let me know what you think of like college basketball and some of the stuff I said there. I respond to every single comment to my YouTube channel, so hey, really appreciate it, y'all, and we'll talk to y'all later. Bye.